Actually, 20 starters this afternoon for the Czech Grand Prix. That's top man who brings up the back of the grid after he picked up a three-place grid penalty yesterday morning. That's the kind of history that Ayagura is looking to make today, looking to become Japan's first winner of a MotoGP race for 22 years. Although you'd never get the impression, would you, looking at Ayagura at any stage through a weekend, or particularly at the moment sitting in the trackhouse box, that there is any pressure at all on Ayagura's shoulders. Always so calm, so chilled. But surely he must have a butterfly or two as he gets set for his first Sunday Grand Prix from pole position.
6 riders in history from Japan have won MotoGP races in the past. Fermin Aldeguer, well, he had a very strong start to our Sunday race action here, having topped the morning warm-up session. Feels like a very long time ago already, doesn't it now? After we've had classic Moto3 and Moto2 battles, which went all the way down to the wire. Let's hope for more of the same in the 21 lap MotoGP battle coming up shortly. Another solid performance in the sprint yesterday from Fermin Aldeguer. Points picked up for him. And of course, going it alone for Gresini Ducati. Going it alone for the Marquez family here in Brno now is Marc Marquez. A tough ride, but a hard-earned ride for the bronze medal last time, or in a sprint yesterday. Oh, we just fortunately sidelined from today's action, but I'm delighted to say he joins Jack right now down in pit lane.
Yeah, great to be joined by Alex Marquez, who, as you can imagine, as ever, has got a big smile on his face. Alex, I spoke to you yesterday, but there'll be thousands, millions around the world that didn't manage to hear those words. So just talk us through the decision to sit out the remainder of the weekend that you made yesterday.
Yeah, you know, it was quite an easy decision for me. I mean, the weekend was much better than what I was expecting. You know, much more practice that I was expecting, laps, and also the speed was there. But then we decided to stop it, it had no sense to take the risk starting from P14, and also, you know, the championship we had too far to be on a title. So yeah, just, you know, it's like was the first step to the full recovery. It's not that coming here my injury when it was. I got inside when I could be better, and in 5 days for sure I will be a little bit better. One step more, try to make all the full weekend, you know.
I guess as a result, you step into sort of fan mode today. You get to watch the race from the outside. So who are you cheering for, and what are your predictions for the race? How do you think it's going to unfold?
Honestly, I was expecting a little bit more cloudy and a little bit less temperature on track, because that will mean that we'll see more overtakes, but with this hot will be difficult for the front tires. So will be interesting to see how it will be, but I think that, you know, I see Pecco, Marc, Dura, also Bija with quite a similar rhythm, also I think Acosta. So it will be interesting to see the pack in the first laps, and then the thing will be there.
I said yesterday, I've seen some genius ways over the years to try and get off work to make sure you can watch World Cup matches, but this is going to be new number one. How have you managed to get off work early so you can get a prime seat for the Spain match later?
You know, I will be able to make siesta after siesta, then at 6 o'clock the World Cup, and later on some cycling. So I think the best and the perfect schedule is this afternoon I have.
Perfect afternoon ahead. Alex, great to see you smiling, and we'll see you in Assen.
Thank you, see that.
Yeah, not jealous at all. Sounds like an ideal Sunday, doesn't it? A siesta, bit of cycling, and watching his home nation team compete in the FIFA World Cup. Great to have Alex back on site. Great to see him back in action here on the Gresini Ducati. A shame he couldn't complete the whole weekend, but he kind of anticipated that pre-weekend. He'll be back with the GP26 in a few days' time in Assen. We just saw it with briefly Pedro Acosta on screens out of his 50th MotoGP start. More texturals once again for the factory KTM rider. We saw a replay of him crashing out of contention in the sprint yesterday at turn 11. Struggled to deactivate his ride height device. Another milestone appearance today as well for another KTM rider, although Prix his 200th MotoGP start here this afternoon. It wasn't exactly the ideal prep, was it, for Malavinales yesterday, as he crashed moments after Diogo Moreira tumbled out of turn 12 on lap 2 of the sprint.
Against the end of lap 1 yesterday, did Maverick Vinales, having made his way ultimately, or narrowly missed out on qualifying 2, but does start in the top 12, of course, with Marco Bezzecchi vacating 4th place on the grid. Everyone behind him ultimately moved up. So we've got KTM at the head of row 3 in Pedro Acosta and KTM at the back of row 4, Maverick Vinales on our 20-rider grid, which will be headed by this man, the ice-cool I-Blue.
He said yesterday he was nervous on the grid ahead of that 10-lap sprint. First time he's started at the head of the grid in the MotoGP World Championship. He himself, I think, thought that he was going to have something late on in that sprint for Bagnaia. No, he's kind of the new rival in terms of time whisperer, isn't he, with an A at Bastianini in MotoGP. If he's in the mix, if he's in contention in those last sort of 7 or 8 laps here this afternoon, well, we do know that Aguila's going to have a cracking chance of ending this long sequence of no success for Japanese fans as we get to view this massive sprawling Brno circuit. What a track this is. That's why they call it the Adrenaline Factory. Hard braking, sharp undulation, 73 metres I think is the high to low of this Brno circuit. It's got the biggest deviation of the whole Grand Prix calendar. As always, in fuel conservation mode, fuel economy mode goes firmly down the gear. The cheeky toe behind the safe fuel as well. It's Jorge Martin.
A little helps, as they say. And this is the long lap penalty loop approaching now. Over to the right as Jorge Martin looks. We're not going to ride on board with him. And Jorge Martin follows further down the gear through that long lap penalty loop. Of course, you've got to stay within to the right of that second white line there, and then you're not allowed to do what Jorge Martin has done there, go out onto that green tarmac. That will be considered exceeding track limits and an illegal long lap penalty. On Friday, Martin was going that route, which is why you can see the black rubber lines through that green tarmac on the exit of turn 7. Clearly one or two teams queried that, and they have clarified and changed the parameters, if you like. Martin will not be allowed to go out there when he serves his 2 long lap penalties.
He's done more long laps this weekend than the fast laps was Jorge Martin. His prime mission right from the get-go in FP1 was to get through there at every opportunity. It's very, very dirty, very, very dusty, and of course not used very often at all. So his primary mission was to have a bit of a clean-up operation throughout the Grand Prix weekend. Clear a bit of dirt, lay a bit of rubber down. We've seen him go through there a couple of spans with his knee and his elbow on the tarmac. Once again, we've seen spectacular action from the Martinator. One moment on Friday, when there's that jaw-dropping shot of him with his shoulder down, pretty much going through turn 13. He is all action, but he's going to need to be here this afternoon with those 2 long laps, making it a pretty complicated Grand Prix coming up for the Spanish rider.
It's going to make the start very important for Jorge Martin. In an ideal world, he's trying to gain places, but he doesn't want to drop himself into that midfield pack on the first lap, because that will just pile on the pain with the long lap penalties. He can't just wait until the end of the race to serve those long laps. Once he gets the information, once he gets the message on his dashboard, which if the evidence of the Moto3 Moto2 races is anything to go by, it'll probably come somewhere on the second lap. He will then have 5 laps to serve 2 long lap penalties. If it's a single long lap, you've got 3 laps. If it's a double long lap, you have 5 laps to serve that penalty.
25-year-old Japanese rider, Aiguero, top 5 in 6 of our opening 8 Grand Prix so far this season. He's been 4 over the line in the last 2. He has knocked on the door of plenty of podiums so far this season. Clearly, we've seen on more than one occasion the potential to take that breakthrough first win. Is today going to be the day? 200 Grand Prix start though today in the top class for the Top Gun Maverick Vinales. Let's get his thoughts with Jack.
Yeah, just saying, it's a long walk down to his grid box from here. Maverick, firstly, congratulations, 200 MotoGP starts, an incredible achievement, and it comes on a weekend where it feels as though starting to find your mojo again.
Yeah, everything is starting to feel much better, especially with the shoulder. In any case, I arrived really exhausted to the race, so I'm really with no energy left. This is what it is, so the best way we can really go through this is putting a lot of effort, and every weekend I think we are going to be better. However, I think this weekend was a significant improvement, not only on physical condition, also the feeling ready for this race, so I will try to put a good rhythm and build up a good race for us.
I think it's a good 200 for you. Good luck.
12th on the grid before the 200 start for Maverick Vinales. Is then your rather depleted Renault grid here today?
Igor, Babic, Antonio and Pecco Bagnaia on the front row. Of course, rear tyre was an important factor yesterday. Everyone will be on the medium rear today. Marc Marquez bumped up to 4th ahead of Diogo Moreira and Ralph Fernandez up onto Moto2. Pedro Acosta 7th ahead of Frankie Morbidelli, who came through Q1 with Jorge Martin, who is now up onto the 3rd row with a double long lap penalty to serve. Fermin Aldeguer will be on screen next from 10th on the grid. He heads row 4 ahead of Tranmere and Maverick Vinales. Fabio Quartararo, first Yamaha on the grid in P13 ahead of Luca Marini, who crashed late on yesterday, and Enea Bastianini 15 on the 2nd of the Tech 3 KTMs. Jack Miller next up in 16th place for Pramac Yamaha ahead of Alex Rins, who got a tyre pressure penalty of 8 seconds yesterday, which dropped him to last place. Brad Binder, the 2020 winner, goes up 2 places from where he qualified, 20th up to 18th ahead of Cal Crutchlow. The reason he goes up 2 is because Toprak Razgatlioglu took a 3-place penalty and slips to the back.
Yeah, Razgatlioglu, his best sprint finish yesterday, although he was outside the points scoring place as he was. Once again, top Yamaha. Just quickly going back to Maverick Vinales. It's been a pretty storied career, hasn't it, so far for the 31-year-old. 200th MotoGP start, and he has that accolade of being one of just 5 riders in Premier Class history to win for 3 different brands: Suzuki, Yamaha and Aprilia. If he was ever to find himself on the tops of the podium for KTM, well, he would be the first rider ever to do so for 4 different manufacturers. To be proud of in his previous 199 Grand Prix starts, is seeking a bit of cool air, a bit of aircon. It is our pole starter, Ayagura. A pretty good deal with a bit of a pick there, couldn't they, after what's unfolded over the last couple of Grand Prix also. What a time to arrive on the scene at Trackhouse at 24, Francesco Guidotti, former Pride Ducati boss, former factory KTM team boss. Slotting in eventually full-time to replace the departing Davide Brivio as the head of the American-based crew. A little chat there with road racing star David Todd from back in the UK. There's Mark Cavendish as well, Tour de France legend, Sir Mark Cavendish, I should say. Pedro Acosta then his 50th MotoGP start today, looking to bounce back from the sprint exit. Let's get the thoughts of crew chief Paul Giamatti.
Yeah, from the front to the 3rd row of the grid now is Pedro. I imagine a bit of frustration, obviously, coming from yesterday, but I feel as though Pedro, once again, it's going to be an afternoon where he's going to try and get the maximum out of it and just see where he ends up in a mirage of Achilles and Ducati.
Yeah, exactly, mate. You know, there's maybe a bigger group of guys strong here, you know, so it's about getting there fairly straight away. Pace-wise, we've been pretty good all weekend. Overall, we're a little bit further back on the grid than we wanted to be, but if we get a good go off the line, and then we can get into that first corner, and I think he's got something to go with the guys at least.
34 degrees ambient temperature. I imagine track temp getting closer to 60. Front tyre, rear tyre, how much are you going to have to look after them?
Yeah, I mean, it's not so much the wear on this track, but it is the temperature, so both front and rear, you know, so again, it's not trying to be caught in a big group, trying to get a bit of fresh air and look after the rear, you know, try to bring it up in a good way and make sure we don't overcook it at the beginning.
Thanks, Paul. Have a good one.
Thank you, mate.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks to Acosta's crew chief Paul Trevathan. Some battle it was, wasn't it, between Acosta and Marc Marquez at Balaton Park a couple of weeks ago. We'd love more of the same. Over 21 laps coming up shortly in Brno. Well, we said the boss is on site, the boss is present, and there's some light words, pep talk from Valentino Rossi to Fabio Antonio. 115 Grand Prix wins for the Doctor. Number 1, numero uno, came right here almost 30 years ago, back in 1996, when he celebrated so strongly. He veered to right and almost went careering into the pit wall, didn't he? Well, Diogo Moreira had a potential for an excellent sprint yesterday. He was running inside the top 3. He's got great potential in the Czech Grand Prix here this afternoon. Brazilian on the 2nd row. Let's give the call to the boss, Lucio CzechGP.
Yeah, Diogo once again the leading light for Honda, and it showcased yesterday, Lucio, that he's pretty dynamite off the line and in the opening laps. What's possible today for the Brazilians?
Well, you know,
the Shark, that's still winless in the top class. He's now had 13 MotoGP podiums, which now means he's the rider with the most podiums without converting any of them into a Premier Class victory.
That said, I think he would take the podium if you offered him it today. It doesn't appear in the grid position would reflect that, but he's had the same level of performance he had in Balance on Park, where it was between Marc Marquez and Pedro Acosta. Jorge Martin then, a bit of a complicated procedure for him coming up then, from 9th on the grid. Of course, he had to try and attack in the early stages, but not make the same mistake he made at the start in Hungary, where he got the double long lap penalty, and then of course trying to serve those 2 long laps and keep himself in a position to still take some big points out of the absent Marco Bezzecchi.
Now in 2025, Jorge Martin made his comeback from getting another major injury here in the Grand Prix of Czechia last year. He's going to need another big comeback in this upcoming race to fight his way and recover from the 2 long laps. The Japanese Grand Prix 2004, Makoto Tamada. The last time we had a race winner in MotoGP, born and bred in Japan. That is what the Japanese fans to the early evening over in the big cities in Southeast Asia. And we're hoping that Agura-san can finally break his winning duck. I went today for Pecco Bagnaia, a repeat of his sprint success yesterday, or any other Italian on this grid, which is minus Marco Bezzecchi, of course. It would be the 300th Premier Class victory for Italy. Pecco Bagnaia's got about, well, he got 10.1 times a winner in MotoGP. So 3rd on the grid, a sprint winner, factory Ducati star Pecco Bagnaia. Alongside him is another Ducati GP26 ride. Fabio Di Gianantonio will find their way up on the front row in 2nd. But for the first time in 6 years, will be the first winner from Japan in 22 years. Agura on pole position in Brno. A track-side altercation with a marshal yesterday, immediately after he crashed out. Success. We heard from a very confident VR46 Ducati team boss Valentino Rossi They firmly believe that Fabio Di Gianantonio has got racing potential. Marc Marquez, the double winner in Balaton Park 2 weeks ago, making back-to-back Sunday wins to find another spark, having ignited the defence of his World Championship charge with that double win in the Grand Prix of Hungary. In front of the sun-drenched and sun-kissed hillsides here in Brno, we're about a 15-kilometre drive outside of downtown Brno, which is going to be buzzing tonight. There's confirmation then. Boy Martin's first offence causing a crash in that first corner in Balaton, which skittled out his teammate Marco Bezzecchi, skittled out another Aprilia rider, Raul Fernandez. Fermin Aldeguer also involved, of course, in that collision. So Marc Marquez, your most recent winner here in Brno. Brad Binder, 6 years ago, taking his first success, KTM's first ever win in the MotoGP World Championship. Pedro Acosta feels carrying their best hopes of a repeat triumph here this afternoon. The Spaniard in the 50th MotoGP start, who leads row 3 in 7th. A 200th MotoGP start incoming for Top Gun Maverick Vinales in the top class. With Ayagura pole position to a sprint silver medal yesterday, over 10 laps. We go double the distance here at the adrenaline factory. The adrenaline will be pumping right now for Agura, 19 of his fellow fastest riders in the world. Brno's battle in 2026 then, minus World Champions leader Marco Bezzecchi, is about to get underway here. Green flag clears at the back of the grid. It's lights out of racing in Brno in MotoGP. It's a superb launch away once again by Fabio Di Gianantonio and Pecco Bagnaia. Ayagura this time around has nailed the start. He's got the drop on the film, this long one down into the first corner, around there in P5, having started in P5. Marc Marquez straight away through on Bagnaia, up into third place.
Yeah, Raul Fernandez is still behind Moreira in 6th. Martin, I think, is up 1. He's in 8th place, just behind Pedro Acosta. Marquez straight on the attack too, on Fabio Di Gianantonio, 4th to 3rd, and now to 2nd.
Oh, ultra aggressive as CZECHIA. Well, twice he almost lost the rear there as he squeezed the power back on, going through 3 and 4. He's lost another place. He's lost 4th to Diogo Moreira. Marc Marquez knows you can't give clear track to Agura. You cannot let him get away.
And Costa also piling on the agony for Fabio Di Gianantonio as he takes away 5th place. So CZECHIA now down from staring at 2nd. He's now 6th.
CZECHIA's getting right duffed up, isn't he? Oh, Bagnaia, that's lovely. It's aggressive. It was hard, but it was crucially clean. So the 2 factory Ducatis getting very, very busy, very aggressive on this opening lap. They don't want to let Agura get into his rhythm.
Oh, he's having a look on the inside there. That's Bagnaia. Now we're looking back from Ayagura. It's the same story at the moment. It was in the sprint yesterday. It's Ayagura versus factory Ducati.
Yeah, and here comes Bagnaia. Is he going to strike on the run down into the Schwantz corner, turn 10 for the first time? He can almost reach out and grab the rear aero on Agura's Prix. Was that Raul Fernandez running wide on the brakes into turn 10? He drops back across the nose of Fermin Aldeguer.
Big move on his first lap is Joan Mir, who's in 7th place. So we'll see on our timing screen shortly, but the information that was sent to us from Michelin is that Mir is on the soft rear tyre, which might explain why he's made some early progress.
So Agura then leading in MotoGP for the very first time. Martin, this is a good early charge through from the factory Prix. He's picked off me then going into turn 13. So for the first time in his Grand Prix career, Ayagura leads over the line in MotoGP under big pressure from Pecco Bagnaia. The sprint winner yesterday, trying to squeeze on the inside line. There goes the Italian, but there's no way through.
Yeah, Marc Marquez's front end was also making all sorts of shapes as he tried to get it stopped to turn 1. He's in 3rd place. Confirmation Mir is on the soft rear tyre in 8th place.
Just looked like Agura just was a little bit scrappy going through turn 2. He was, that's allowing Bagnaia to try and level him on the brakes into 3. Hardest braking zone here in Brno. Cutting now to the inside line, going through 4 is Bagnaia, but on the cutback, Agura will just sweep back on through. Intense early battle here. Is Bagnaia going to lose another place though now to 93? Acosta's got through Moreira 2 in 4th place.
So much of the Top 3 race was about the heat, about not letting your tyres get too hot, front tyre and rear tyre, and that is why Bagnaia is so desperate here to get the track position and grab the lead from Ayagura.
That looked like Mir was going to have an attack potential costly on Martin going through turn 7. I think Martin was just about able to close the door shut in front of his fellow Spaniard. It's still Aguirre then that's at the front of this Grand Prix. He has been under immense early pressure from the two factory Ducatis. 9 MotoGP world titles between them behind him. As Bagnaia once again will try and attack down the hill into the front corner. That was a move that the Texan legend would love himself. Bagnaia's going to cut it to the curve. He's going to make the apex. Pecco Bagnaia leads.
Fabio Quartararo down on the second lap. Another miserable weekend for Yamaha. Looks like it's come to an end for the 2021 world champion. This is Jorge Martin. We were briefly watching him defending from Fermin Aldeguer. And of course, while he's detached from this group and the 2 long lap penalties still to come, he's in some trouble.
Acosta on no drive coming out of turn 11. Oh, here comes Marc Marquez. He's got the inside line. Nothing that Aguirre can do about that. Acosta has held on to 4th place ahead of Moreira, despite him not being razor sharp on the throttle coming out of 11. So a factory Ducati 1-2. Bagnaia with clear tarmac ahead of him. And the first ride into the 53s, a 153.886. So Bagnaia leads it from Marc Marquez. Aguirre then pushed back down from 1st to 3rd.
The information has now come on your screens. It'll also be on Martin's dashboard. It was on the main straight. Now he's been issued his double long lap penalty. So he has the next 5 or so laps to serve that penalty as Di Giannantonio's coming back through on Moreira. Martin has been passed by Fermin Aldeguer, and with 2 long laps still to come, he'll be way outside the top 10.
Yeah, he's got that place back though as Aldeguer went charging way too hot into turn 3. So a free hit there for Martin. Down we go into turn 5 then. Lap 3 of 21. There is Martin then. Having been given that notice, he knows the score. 5 laps he'll have to complete his double long lap. Is he going to come straight in? No, this time round he's going to plough on. He's got Joan Mir just ahead of him. Those two had almost close contact right here at turn 7.
Yeah, I think it's best for Martin, if the pace is fairly fast, is to try and leave it as late as possible. Because if he takes the first long lap immediately, he'll drop in behind the likes of Marini, Bastianini and Binder, who are down in 12th, 13th and 14th. So I think Martin's just got to let this race play out, let the field gently spread out, and then find a gap to slot into once he's served his long laps.
We know how awesome, we know how blinks the girl looks a little bit wide there going through turn 10. It's going to cost him a couple of tenths to the 2 bright red factory Dukes ahead of him. We know he's one of the best performers on well-worn Michelin rubber towards the back end of Grand Prix. The factory Ducatis of Bagnaia and Marc Marquez will be more than well aware of the strengths and weaknesses of Aguirre. And at the moment, he's dropping back into the clutches of Acosta, Vigiu and Mir, not helped by that slight wide run through turn 10.
Won't want to overdo this, won't want to leave himself too much to do with our stages. No matter how strong you are at the end of the race, you don't want to be giving riders of the calibre and class of Pecco Bagnaia and Marc Marquez too big of a head start. Bagnaia at 153.540, fraction faster than Marc Marquez. The 2 factory Ducatis, one with Di Giannantonio, who's running 5th, are the only riders in the 53s.
Yeah, those 3 Ducati GP26s, they've got some serious early pace, haven't they, in the early part of this Brno battle. Bagnaia then pivots the rear tyre back Ducati to get it turned into turn 3. The girl's going to be careful here because he's being detached away from Bagnaia. And Marc, he's coming under pressure that's building behind him. Acosta and Di Giannantonio really is now closing up on Pedro Acosta. I don't think he's been close enough to attack the Spaniard on the brakes in the turn 5. No, he isn't.
What we're seeing is vintage Pecco Bagnaia at the moment, isn't it? Having won this run yesterday, he was so hard, he piled the pressure on, he asked the questions via Aguirre, and finally he was rewarded with the lead. What can he now do? Is he in a position to be able to eke out the advantage over Marc Marquez? And are we potentially going to get the duel we've all been longing for between the 2 factory Ducati teammates, Bagnaia and Marquez, with 9 MotoGP titles between them?
Fabio Quartararo's miserable spell on the factory Yamaha rolls on, doesn't it? That early exit for the Frenchman. It's going to be now 3 successive Grand Prix with Fabio Quartararo is not going to pick up a single point. Dismal, tough time for the 2021 world champion. Just moving out of your picture is Aguirre in 3rd place. What now looks like a slightly more comfortable 3rd. Having on the previous lap run a little bit wide at turn 10 and just giving Acosta a bit of a sniff of throwing the K-Team on the inside.
Still yet to see Martin serve either of his long lap penalties. Those 2 canters next to his name on the left between the screens will drop to 1 when he comes to first time. 2.8 seconds off the lead at the moment. The gap's starting to open up behind him. Now if he served his first long lap, he'd probably come out somewhere near Morbidelli in 11th place. So at the moment the field and the gaps are starting to open up for Martin behind him.
Marc Marquez is currently the fastest rider on circuit. He just put in a 1:53.639. PB laps on both Agura and Acosta in third and fourth respectively. You know what an awesome defensive rider Pedro Acosta is at the moment. Antonio just cannot get close enough. Can he to attack the Spaniard deep into this harsh braking zone into turn 3. You can hear Didier just pick up the throttle, go through this flip-flop through 3 and 4, and down the hill into one of the overtaking hotspots here in 5. But as you can see, Acosta giving no chance whatsoever for Didier to attack him.
Back with Martin then, the issue he's got at the moment is that he's bottled up in the group, being led by the two Hondas of Moreira and Mir. I think his right leg came out there, just indicating to Aldeguer, I'm going to peel off and go to the long lap penalty loop. Importantly, he doesn't go on the green on the outside of this long lap penalty loop. Knee down, and he does go onto the green. It's Jorge Martin now going to have to serve that all over again.
He's made a right ricket of that, hasn't he? A right hash of that. And his desperation to minimise the damage of those 2 long laps, he was massively on the green. That was a smart move, wasn't it, initially, to just dangle his left leg out to Fermin Aldeguer, letting Aldeguer know that he was going to be coming into the long lap. But having done so, well, pretty sure he's still got 2 long laps to serve.
Yeah, we'll keep a very close eye on our timing screens because they'll tell us whether he's incorrectly served it. Maybe they'll wait until he's come through twice before they tell him. We definitely know Martin is going to have to come through at least once more, potentially twice more. He lost those places to Aldeguer and Fernandez, so he's in 10th place now, and we'll wait to find out whether he's got 1 or 2 long laps left.
There is this battle between Moreira and Aldeguer. It has come up on our screens. This is the current information that Martin has served half of his 2 long laps. We'll keep a close eye on that, but at the moment the information is that, yeah, he's completed 1 of 2.
Yeah, the other teams certainly weren't too pleased with that when they saw Martin serving those long laps, the practice long laps, in that manner, but we're having confirmation that he is okay. So there's clearly a bit of a grey area there in terms of whether you're allowed to serve a long lap in that manner or whether you're not. Martin clearly would have been in no doubt before he came through that long lap loop what he was allowed to do and what he wasn't allowed to do, as Aldeguer now comes through on Diogo Moreira. So that's Fermin Aldeguer taking 7th place from Moreira, who is starting to gently fall back after that lightning start he made.
It's quick right now in this phase of the Grand Prix on the factory KTM. 53.539, that's some speed by Acosta. Half a century of Grand Prix appearances in MotoGP notched up today for the 22-year-old Spaniard. Still searching for that elusive first win. So this, if it's all legal and above board, will Jorge Martin taking his medicine. I tell you what, it looked like he almost was took in the front there. I mean, will that be a safe rejoin?
Well, that's what they're worried about, and I guess that's why Martin and Aprilia are saying it's better for us to go out onto the greens. If we're on the curb, we're straight in the face of another rider on the racing line. That's Manuel Vinales going onto the green there. So Jorge Martin has now been through the long penalty loop twice, and if we trust that he's done so in accordance with the regulations, and Aprilia and Martin will have definitely checked before the race got underway, confirmation, 2 of 2
place. You feel like a top 10 is going to be a good salvage job from that point for Martin. Here is your race leader, looking so comfortable, looking so composed. A throwback yesterday in the sprint to Vinicius Pecco-Bagnaia. Well, he's doing the same at the moment. He's in a number on the field in this Czech Grand Prix. He's upping the pace, is Bagnaia. Lap 6 of 21. He's just put in a 1:53.531. That's now 7/10 clear of Marc Marquez. He in turn's about half a second up the road clear of the pole sitter Ayagura.
Very little to choose between the pace of certainly the top 3, if not top 4. Acosta on a 53.7, just a tenth slower than Agura on his personal best, and 2 tenths slower than Bagnaia leading the race. The Gian Antonio is just clinging on a little bit in the back of the picture there in 5th place. And Mir still running a strong 6th, setting his personal best last time around. 2 seconds off the back of this leading group of 5. Mir's bigger jeopardy, I guess, in the second half of this race, as if he's going to struggle in the second half of the Grand Prix on the soft rear tyre.
Trying to finish both a sprint and a Grand Prix for the first time, in 14 rounds. The last time he took the checker flag in both race events was at the Japanese Grand Prix in Motegi last year. Far too many DNFs once again in the column for the 2020 World Champions. And the top ride though, a very, very strong ride at the moment. Lead Honda up there in 6th place. So pick up the top 5. Powering down towards turn 5. He's Bagnaia, he's still leading by about half a second until his teammate Marc Marquez turned 10 on. This isn't the Swans corner.
And then we're just in the back of the picture, so that Algor in 3rd place. And is he just going to keep his powder dry at this stage, knowing it's a long race to go? Perhaps it's better at this stage to sit maybe 4, 5, 6 tenths on the back of the rider in front of you, just to keep the temperature of your front tyre under control. We heard from Paul Travathan, Pedro Acosta's crew chief, before he's got underway. It's not the wear on the tyre, it's managing the temperature, which will decide whether you've got any grip left at the end.
Well, if you're seeking positives from the Marco Bezzecchi camp right now, looks like he will retain the lead in the MotoGP World Championship, doesn't it? Going to Assen next weekend. Marc Marquez, the fastest rider on circuit, the 1:53.437. He's just starting to build up that pressure, turn up the wick on Bagnaia.
Well, interesting, we got messages on screen earlier on the weekend, didn't we, that going out onto the green when you serve along that penalty will be deemed a track limit strike. Well, that would make sense for Jorge Martin already at this stage on lap 8 has been given a track limits warning. I think we can see already where 2 of those were, and when he went onto the green coming over along that penalty loop. So Martin has to be a little bit careful now with the green tarmac on the outside of this Brno racetrack, otherwise he might not be done with 2 long laps yet.
So you've got almost identical gaps really between the top 5 at the moment. This front tyre temperature, front tyre pressure, something that these riders are having to contend with and juggle right now. We're not even at the halfway point, not even close to the halfway stage of this Grand Prix. It's scorching hot conditions, punishing for those Michelin tyres as we track the 2 factory Ducatis then through turns 8 and 9. That gap is coming down once again. Marc Marquez is starting to hunt down Bagnaia.
There are different ways of tracking it, depending on which bike you're riding in terms of the tyre pressure parameters and making sure you fulfil the requirements to avoid a penalty at the end of the Grand Prix. From the Ducati point of view, they get the indicator on their dashboard. Once they fulfilled the required number of laps, you've got to fulfill a certain percentage of the distance within the right tyre pressure. Once you've done that, you're then free to go. So potentially for Marc Marquez, he'll be waiting until he's ticked that particular box, and then he can go all out attack.
There is Agura, 8 tenths of a second. He is behind Marc Marquez. 3:14 we go then. Shot back the world champion, dragging the elbow through that final corner. So on to lap 9 of 21 we go. It is still Bagnaia that's keeping Marquez at bay by almost half a second. That gap has just crept out between Marquez and Agura to 8 tenths. He's now 1.3 seconds off the lead. Is the Japanese rider. We've got now powering towards turn 3. He's under no serious threat, no big pressure from Acosta behind him, and Acosta actually has dropped Fabio Di Giannantonio, hasn't he? Fabio Di Giannantonio just have to maybe back on the pace here because he's scorching that front tyre.
He's dropped into the 154s on the last lap for Di Giannantonio. He was only a smidge faster than Mir behind him. Aldeguer in the 53s now in 7th place. We're picking the 54 up now as he's closing in on the factory Honda of Joan Mir. For Jorge Martin fans, if you're trying to keep an eye on his progress, unfortunately for you, he hasn't made any progress since he filtered in after that long lap penalty in that group of KTMs. He's still stuck there.
Herrera trying to hold on to this 8th place ahead of Raul Fernandez, who'll be suffering in the second half of this Grand Prix. He had to cancel all his media duties here in Brno on Thursday. There was fears that he might miss this Grand Prix and next weekend's Grand Prix of the Netherlands in Assen with appendicitis. So any points that Raul Fernandez can pick up in this Grand Prix will feel like a bit of a win, a bit of a bonus. As Moreira just about does get that Honda stop down the hill into turn 10.
Keep an eye on the leading pair at the top left-hand corner of your screen, the helicopter shot. Keeping an eye on Bagnaia and Marc Marquez, tracking them through the first 3 sectors. Very little to choose. Marquez just chipping away in every sector. It's around 4 tenths of a second is the gap. That's a gap that both of the factory Ducati riders will be very comfortable with, whereas they're not even at half distance yet.
Right now, Ducati are jumping on the jugular, aren't they, over Aprilia right now. No Marco Bezzecchi in this Grand Prix. You sense that this was going to be a massive free hit, an open goal as far as the factory Ducati team are concerned, in recovering a whole chunk of points once again to Bez and Martin, and they are taking that advantage. They are seizing it with both hands, aren't they, right now? Marc Marquez once again just slightly quicker, nothing in it really, a 53.6, better with a 53.5 from the 93 of Marc Marquez. A lonely third now for Agura, who is stretching away from Acosta. In fact, Agura's matching the pace of Marc Marquez directly ahead of him. Agura had just put in his PB lap on this Grand Prix. Looks like he's broken Acosta.
It looks like Marc Marquez is now starting to really close on Pecco Bagnaia. Bagnaia is a fraction wide through turn 3, which gives you a more acute line into 4. There are a variety of lines that we can see through that corner, so it might not necessarily have been a mistake, it might have been by design. We're now looking forward from the reigning world champion, 7 Moto2 World titles for Marc Marquez, up ahead of him, Pecco Bagnaia, a 2-time Moto2 world champion. The heavyweight Ducati pairing, we haven't seen many on-track battles between the two. Are we going to get one for victory here today?
These two will know, as they keep seeing on their pit board, the gap between them and 79 Agura. They will know that there's maybe an attack coming late on. The onus here on Agura to try and snatch away some important championship points for Aprilia. On board then with Marc. Through 12 we go. We're going to start this rapid ascent up Horsepower Hill. Over the blind crest now on the race into turn 13. Just see there, a bit of a really tight lifting in the air for Bagnaia. That's how hard he's having to push to keep himself at the front of this battle in Brno. What's the gap between now? This is the closest that Marc has been. 63 taking on 93. Yeah, that gap's come down to just under 2/10 of a second, and it is successive PB laps for Agura as well. For this stage of the race, half distance, this is a real fast pace. How much longer can they sustain this for?
Too fast for Pedro Acosta. He's now doing mid-54s in 4th place. He's reversed back towards Fabio Di Gianantonio. That's a battle now going on for 4th and 5th. Jorge Martinez made his first overtake since serving his 2 long lap penalties. He has just passed Enea Bastianini for 12th place. That's worth 4 points to it.
Yeah, going to get his claws in very, very quickly to Frankie Morbidelli. Tractor this warning coming in the way of Fermin Aldeguer. At the moment is doing high 153s, and coming back into this battle for 4th place is now Fabio Di Gianantonio. And the team communication, well, that's not a sight that's going to keep you cool, is it, in MotoGP? Plus 0.93 as they power out of turn 7. Marc Marquez, I mean, he'll be getting the message from his pit board that Agura's closing in here. Marc's going to be thinking, well, I've got to get through on Pecco very, very quickly, because we know how good Agura is in the latter stages of the Grand Prix. We're going to go down the hill and into turn 10. Marc's going to be close, very easy to attack Pecco.
Of course, that is all just for Pecco Bagnaia's information, but he will be well aware at this stage not only the gap behind him, but who is behind him. There are a few experiences less comfortable in MotoGP than Marc Marquez being the rider immediately behind you. Agura is within about a second of the race lead now in 3rd place, and Pedro Acosta now nearly 2.5 seconds back of Agura, and he's already starting to really struggle.
Martin has indeed picked up 11 from Morbidelli, so can still get himself in the top 10. He's 2 seconds, a little bit more behind Narini in 10th place as it stands right now. Out of the final corner, full power engaged for the 2 factory Ducatis. That is now 3 successive laps that Agura has found a PB lap, a 153.491 on that lap number 11. And Agura now exactly 0.8 of a second behind Marc.
If you want to know what kind of level we're dealing with here, with Bagnaia and Marc Marquez, they both set identical lap times on the last lap around. Both of them did a 153.619. So Bagnaia is not going to let this one go easily. He wants his first double of 2026. And of course, it will be his first double since the weekend Marc Marquez was crowned world champion.
Agura, though, is coming. Agura is on the charge. The 53.6 is from Marc and Pecco, lightning fast, but still not as fast as Agura, coming on strong behind the pair of them. You feel that this is the golden chance, the first real big opportunity, maybe Kota aside, and when he was steamrolling towards the front before he had the big mechanical late on for Agura to win his first Grand Prix in MotoGP, to be the first Japanese rider to do so in over 2 decades. Yeah, the gap's come down to half a second already. Halfway around this lap 12, he's taken a 1/4 of a second out of Marc Marquez.
I think in part that's also because I think Marc Marquez is just dropping back a little bit from Pecco Bagnaia. Was 2/10 at the start of the lap. That gap has nearly doubled to the factory Ducati rider. So as Marquez again just had to perhaps give his front tyre a little bit of a breather and reverse away from his teammate back towards Ayagura. No pressure, I know nothing really phases you. Just 9 MotoGP World Championships you've got to overtake if you want your first win.
He's glued to the back of the rear tyre of Costa, but that's where he's been stuck pretty much for the entirety of this Grand Prix. What have you got then, Ayagura? What have you got, Trackhouse, Aprilia? As we shortly are going to move on to lap 13 of 21. Marc Marquez, there's the message, loud and clear to the number 93. Fair play to Bagnaia. He has responded. He's just put in his best lap of this Grand Prix. A 53.510. He's desperate for the double, isn't he, once again, the 63.
Yeah, and Pecco out to prove a point that I can go head-to-head with Marc Marquez on equal machinery on the same day for victory and beat him. That would mean an awful lot to Pecco Bagnaia, who, of course, has got so much success over his years. 31 victories. He's looking to become the 300th victory for Italy in MotoGP. But in terms of a head-to-head with Marc Marquez, this would mean so much to him.
Costa once again defending like an absolute titan. How wide does he make that KTM? Awesome job once again, isn't it, by the Spanish rider? When you look where some of the other KTMs are, I mean, the next best RC16 is down in 13th place. Did you then finds a way through on Acosta? Finally.
There's a big long look there from Pedro Acosta. He was looking over to his left and he went wide. Do wonder whether Pedro Acosta might be into some front tyre issues in terms of his pressure, and he needs to sit behind someone and cool and potentially get some heat onto his front tyre rather than cool it down. There was a clear, noticeable look to his left there from Acosta when he went wide at 7.
At the front, still the gap half a second between Bagnaia and Marc Marquez. Yeah, there is the long look then from Acosta to his left. So the 4th place that Diggia did not really have to fight for it, didn't really have to muscle his way through, did he, on Acosta? I was just about to say Acosta doing another phenomenal job for KTM. I mean, their next best runner is Enea Bastianini down in 13th place. He's over 10 seconds behind Acosta. Maverick Vinales potentially picking up a point to mark his 200th MotoGP start. Trying to prove a point here is Ayagura. Well, this is Agura stand territory, isn't it? This is where he tends to come into his own. Lap 13 in the books. Agura has just put in the best lap of this Grand Prix. A 153.392. Ayagura eyeing that first MotoGP victory.
Catching though is one thing, catching Marc Marquez and Pecco Bagnaia, overtaking them is something altogether different. He has 8 laps to pass 2 legends of MotoGP. Ayagura, potentially a legend of the future, Moto2 World Champion, first pole position clinched yesterday, first sprint podium, first Grand Prix podium is on his way. If he stays where he is in 3rd place, but Ayagura has no mood to stay where he is.
His first MotoGP podium coming in that historic order, fully lockout of the podium in Le Mans at the French Grand Prix. There's been some tough times of late, hasn't there, though, for the Nawali factory. The double lap, long lap for Jorge Martin. The bound today for series leader Marco Bezzecchi. He was at least going to cling on to the World Championship lead going to the Netherlands next time out. Down the hill we go then. Ayagura. Can he get close? 7.5 to go here in Brno. It's been the front running made for much of this race. Segura went for the first 2 or 3 laps before he yielded to the 2 factory Ducatis, but it's still Bagnaia that's resisting.
Shout out to Mir once again, 6th place, still lapping in the 153s. Remember, he's the only rider on track who's got the soft rear tyre fitting. Really hoping he doesn't hit that cliff edge of performance in the remaining 7.5 laps, because he's still on course for what will be a highly impressive top 6 finish for the 2020 champion.
Yeah, that is class ride, that by Bagnaia. Absolutely awesome. He'll just be desperate to see the checker flag here in Brno, because in his last 3 visits he's been collected and taken out by the opposition. Marc Marquez now then. He is responding to Agura's pressure. He's responding to Agura's charge, because that's now successive laps that Agura and Marc have exchanged. The best lap in this Grand Prix. We're now down to a 53.223. This is an incredible pace such a hot pace and the hottest conditions of the weekend so far. How on earth are they sustaining this on what are now well-used and abused Michelin tyres?
It's Marc Marquez. I thought he might have a potential look into turn 4. Let's go the corners where Bagnaia had a look at Marc Marquez. And will that spark Ayagura into action? If Marc Marquez hits the front and passes Bagnaia, surely Ayagura is going to have to crack on here.
Marc's going to be wary. It's all well and good hugging the rear tyre of Pecco Bagnaia, but he's going to have to be wary about the tyre temp and the tyre pressure. Can't sit too long, certainly this close to Pecco Bagnaia when it's a rider who was born to win. It's in his DNA. Settle for second, never. That is just not something that Marc Marquez does. It's not something that he ever entertains. He's powering now out of turn 9, down into turn 10. Pecco Bagnaia. Nothing that Marc can do. Bagnaia is still holding firm.
You can see visibly beyond board camera how the front end is moving around for Marc Marquez as he's pleading that factory captain to stop into turn 10. Yeah, once you get this close behind Bagnaia, if he doesn't pass him straight for a lap or two, he might then have to just give his tyre a breather and attack again. Still 6.25 laps to go. Bagnaia has led this since practically the start of lap 2.
Again, there's nothing that Marquez can do. Can't get close enough to jam it on the inside of Bagnaia into turn 13. So shortly we'll be on lap 16 of 21. It's going to, it looks like we're poised for some late fireworks here in the Grand Prix of Czechia. 53 fives from your top 3. Gian Antonio, once he was able to clear Acosta, well, he's got pace that's quicker than your top 3 ahead of him. Mia's now got through on Pedro Acosta as well, who is dropping like a stone.
He's that desperate, I think, to have someone else in front of him, because Gian Antonio gapped him very quickly. So if he was trying to have someone ahead of him to put some hot air on his front tyre, it failed, and he's now dropped 3 seconds on that last lap, and he's now swapped behind Mia.
Here goes Marc Marquez, that is his move. He has finally decided then it's time to break Bagnaia. He has made the attack. Marc Marquez it is that leads for the first time here in Brno. He's on course for back-to-back wins here in the Czech Republic. He made the move then going through turn 3 and 4. 93 leads 63. Big interest in third place still for Ayagura from pole position, but Marc Marquez now in control here in Brno.
Pecco Bagnaia, have you got anything to respond with, or are you now looking at second place and looking at Ayagura on behind you? Remember when this weekend began, after Marc Marquez talked his chances down in Balton Park and then proved himself wrong as the weekend got underway, he said he'd be happy if he finished closer than he did the 10 seconds back. And back in Mugello, as he once again has that movement on the front end of turn 10, but he is safely through, and of course as he stands for back-to-back MotoGP wins.
Yeah, he's just trying to break them. He's trying to crush them here, isn't he? Just look, he was trying to just break Bagnaia. You could see just how desperate Marc was to clear off there, because that Ducati snapped sideways underneath him on the braking zone for turn 10. Has Marc Marquez produced yet another strategic masterclass here? He'll be needing a bit of a turn here from his teammate Bagnaia to try and keep Agura at bay for as long as he possibly can. Agura will know, he will see Marquez checking out the front here in Czechia, has to find a way through.
Yeah, 53.4 for Marc Marquez, 54.2 for Pecco Bagnaia. Bagnaia looks like he might have hit a bit of a cliff edge here and now starting to tumble off it in terms of performance. And this is an imperative lap here for Ayagura to pass Pecco Bagnaia ASAP if he wants any hope of a maiden MotoGP victory today.
Marc Marquez took 30 points out of Marco Bezzecchi last time out in Hungary. He could be taking 32 points out of Marc Marquez. Talk about a massive shift in momentum. How big the pendulum has swung in just 2 rounds here. As Marco Bezzecchi, well, he will know now. It's fair to say Marc Marquez can get the job done here in Brno. Well, he is, without any question, a serious contender to retain his MotoGP world title.
Yeah, this is, I guess, kind of the result that Marco Bezzecchi might have feared watching from the Aprilia box as he is this afternoon. Maximum punishment being dealt out from the reigning champion to the current World Championship leader. He will retain the World Championship lead today, with Jorge Martin still running in 11th place, but it's the Marc Marquez damage that might be more significant to Bezzecchi's title hopes today.
3 weeks ago, as Agura was coming from a long way back, there's an air of desperation here. He knows he has to make the move. He just runs Bagnaia out wide. There's nothing that Bagnaia can do. So now then, Ayagura then, we're going to check the gap between him and Marc Marquez with, what, 4.5 laps to go. The gap is 9/10 of a second. Plenty of time for Gura. Feels like he's got the pace. He feels like, crucially, he's got the rear tyre underneath him to hunt down the 93.
Look at how aggressive Guru is being on the way into turn 13, visibly just pulling metres away from Pecco Bagnaia. It's from a long way back, where Bagnaia just had nothing to defend with. He was completely powerless to keep Agura behind him. And Agura, even with that overtake on the last lap, still set a faster lap time than the leader, Marc Marquez, by a tenth. It's 8/10 between them with 4 to go.
3 weeks ago, I was about to say, 102 points Marc Marquez trailed Marco Bezzecchi. That could shrink down to 40 points. What a massive, massive shift in the power battle this year. Not a given though, is it, that the 25 points are going the way of 33-year-old Spaniard Marc Marquez, because he's got 3.5 laps to try and resist what you know is going to be a late onslaught here from Agura. He is desperate. He's craved this first win. He wants to end all the talk about will he be the first Japanese winner in MotoGP since Makoto Tamada all the way back in 2004.
Well, saying he had to pass 2 legends at MotoGP if he was going to take a maiden victory today. It's 1 down, 1 to go in that respect. He's passed Pecco Bagnaia. Can he now catch and pass the reigning world champion? But Marc Marquez has been in his position so many times, 100 to be exact, after watching that century up a couple of weeks ago.
This was a beaut move as well. That was lovely. That was your textbook, perfectly executed move on Bagnaia on the change direction going through 3 and 4. Marc Marquez is still keeping that gap to Agura back to about 8/10 of a second. He's all in here for the win, isn't he, Agura? But at the moment, he just cannot break that gap down to under 7/10. Time now not really on his side, is there? There's going to be 3 laps remaining very, very shortly as Marc powers up Horsepower Hill. Into 13 he goes. The final right-hander of 14. What is going to be the gap then between 93 and 79? Over the line, your race leader Marc goes. It is still just in the 3/4 of a second. Agura is going for this big time in India. 53.346 is his best lap of the Grand Prix. The tyre whisperer, well, he's making a right noise now, isn't he? 18-lap-old tyres, and he's doing 53.3s.
He's throwing the kitchen sink at this. So now is Pedro Acosta. He must have been keen to heat his front tyre up, because look, he's dropped in behind Joan Mir, and now he's all over the back of him like a rash. This is the battle for 5th place. Pecco Bagnaia isn't guaranteed 3rd place yet either, as Acosta goes up the inside to retake that 5th place from Joan Mir, albeit briefly as he runs wide into turn 3. CZECHIA did his personal best last time around and took 6/10 out of Pecco Bagnaia, and he's 1.5 behind him, so Bagnaia doesn't have that 4th consecutive 3rd place sewn up yet.
The 10th has gone the way of Agura as Mir tries to defend as hard as he can on the brakes in the turn 5 from Acosta, and that mission has failed for the factory Honda rider. We're keeping a very, very close eye on the top left-hand corner of the screens, because Marc Marquez, well, he's a 100-time Grand Prix winner, a 7-time MotoGP world champion, but he's going to be calling on all of those skills, all of his reserves of talent to try and hold off Agura. 6/10 it remains halfway around this lap 19.
Marc Marquez is squeezing everything he can out of this. Agura's personal best was only a 1/2 tenth quicker than the reigning world champion. Agura is finding out firsthand here just how hard Marc Marquez is to beat.
Here is Martin, and he's going to go through on Moreira. So Martin's day is going to get better. He is going to rescue. He is going to salvage a top 10, it looks like, despite those 2 long lap penalties. I think he could probably settle for a top 10, given the circumstances that he was facing coming into this 21-lap Grand Prix. And you know what, Marc Marquez, he's just riding phenomenally. Look at this, but Antonio just put in the fast lap of the Grand Prix. It's going to be more than a bit of a regret for CZECHIA, having got beaten up in those first couple laps and then got stuck behind Pedro Acosta for the first half of this Grand Prix. 53.199 from CZECHIA. Has he got anything left to maybe hunt down Pecco Bagnaia in the battle of a 3rd? I think he's going to run out of time.
Yeah, Bagnaia recognised the danger and responded with his own personal best. Still lost a 1/4 second to Gian Antonio on that previous lap, but it's limiting the damage at this stage. 1.2 the gap with 2 laps remaining. The gap between the top 2 is now 1/2 second. Agura, though, in danger of just running out of time here.
This is is Marc Marquez reasserting his authority on the MotoGP World Championship. He said in the first part of the season he was riding with 1.5 arms, struggling to recover from that right arm injury. A screw compressing the radial nerve in the right arm, which was causing him pain and causing him numbness. He looks like he is emerging back to his brilliant best. He's going to need his best. He's going to need his Sunday best, isn't he, to hold off Agura here in Brno. He dropped down the hill into turn 10 for the second to last time. Agura now needs the lap and a half of his life if he is to wrestle P1 away from the world champion.
He needs to be strong in his final sector 2 as he was on the previous lap. He loses time in sectors 2 and 3. He might well close on Marc Marquez on the final lap, but is he close to a bit of a shake of the head? Was it there from Agura back in second place? Is he recognising that after all the hard work he's done this weekend, it's been the best weekend of Agura's MotoGP career, but is it just going to fall short of a maiden win?
Over the line we go then. 5.4 kilometres standing between Marc Marquez and another brilliant Brno performance. When has Marc Marquez ever given up an 8/10 of a second lead going into a final lap? Fair play to Agura, he has fought a great fight, but just like in yesterday's sprint, is he going to be toppled by a factory Ducati? Yesterday it was Bagnaia that denied him a gold medal. Today it looks like it is going to be the reigning world champions going to go back-to-back in Brno as Pedro.
Is that more KTM problems? Here so, on the last lap, Pedro Acosta retires from 5th place.
Well, that is a bitter pill for Acosta to swallow. Tough times for Pedro Acosta, who's going to leave Brno pointless. A chance for him to really stick his nose in that championship fight with no Marco Bezzecchi point scoring finishes this weekend.
Has been cut in half.
Has been cut in half. You know what, Agura might need this to be a 22-lap race. He closes in. Look at this from Bagnaia. The Gian Antonio, well, there could be 2 late plot twists here in Brno. Is Agura going to get Marc Marquez for the win? Is Digia going to get Bagnaia for the final place on the podium?
Happened to Bagnaia on Mugello last year, didn't it, when he lost the 3rd place in the final metres to his fellow Italian. You can see the nerves from Julio Marquez, who I think wants to watch his son. His son is 3 corners away from back-to-back MotoGP wins.
This one's over. This one is over. Agura has tried to go toe-to-toe with Marc Marquez, which is arguably just about the toughest task in Grand Prix racing history. But once again, we are looking at the 93 magician. Just look how hard he is pushing through that final corner he goes. It's back-to-back wins in 2026 for Marc Marquez. It's back-to-back wins in Brno for the reigning world champion. He has done it here. Fabio Di Gianantonio sets the fastest lap of the race on the last lap, but can't take the podium and steal the 3rd place away from Bagnaia. Agura then from pole position does take 2 second places, by far his best weekend of his MotoGP career. But Marc Marquez, how does he keep on doing it? Once again, he defies the odds here in Brno. He takes the win by just under half a second. Agura Bagnaia your podium, Gian Antonio 4th, Mir takes a superb 5th place. Top job that by the factory Honda rider, 6th for Aldeguer. Points for Fernandez, Marini, Martin in 9th. Good recovery from his 2 long laps. Bastianini took Morera on the last lap of 10th. Bindem all with a Razgatlioglu and Vinales on his 200 start are in the point scoring places. Has he ever had to work that hard for 25 points in his Grand Prix career? He topped the century of wins last time out in Balaton Park. And now it is win number 101 for Marc Marquez, who has done what he would have set out to do. No points in Brno for World Championship leader Marco Bezzecchi. 25 points collected today by Marc Marquez. We have seen a massive swing in this World Championship. Bezzecchi came into the Czech Grand Prix with a 20-point buffer over Martin. That has shrunk down to just 8.
This was how Marquez, how hard he was trying. Well, the entire Grand Prix, but this is on the last lap into the penultimate corner. A little bit of a moment. It would have felt more dramatic than that on board. I can promise you, as Marc Marquez threw his mind, body and soul into that to claim victory When he went off for surgery after the French Grand Prix, we thought his world title defence was finished. You could make a very valid case now that he's the favourite again.
Yeah, this title race is on. It's more than on. He knows he's in the game. Marc Marquez missed the French Grand Prix, didn't he, after the bruising crash in the sprint. He was sidelined for his home clash in Catalonia. He has returned with strong rides into the points scoring place in Mugello. Since then, sprint winning Grand Prix win in Hungary, sprint podium here in the Grand Prix of Czechia, followed up by another victory. He just keeps defying the odds, doesn't he? This is the start of his 8th comeback from major injuries since Jerez in 2020. But you can't stop the winning machine that is Marc Marquez. Let's get a thoughts of factory Ducati boss Gigi Lineweer.
Gigi, in the blink of an eye, it goes from 102 points to now just 40 behind the World Championship leader. How significant of a gauge is this here?
I know, honestly speaking, I don't want to think too much of the championship. I think it's better to continue to think race by race, and we will see what happens. You know, it's an important result. It's an important result.
It's a long championship. It's a very tough championship over 22 Grand Prix. But Marc Marquez, well, he ignited his title defence with the double win in Balaton Park in Hungary a couple of weeks ago. And that hunger, that desire to be the best, to keep himself as the reference rider in the MotoGP World Championship, well, that just will never go away, will it? Pecco Bagnaia, a little bit like he did in front of his home crowd in Mugello a few weeks ago, did a lot of the front running before he has to settle for 3rd place. On occasion, he just about fended off the late charge from Ayagura. Today, he had to fend off the charge late on Fabio Di Gianantonio, who's going to be left to rue what was not a poor start, but just never got going in those first 2 or 3 laps when he was beaten up and pushed back to, that 6th or 7th place. Agura close, but it is still Makoto Tamada that will remain, for the time being at least, as the most recent Japanese winner in the MotoGP World Championship. But no doubt about it, make no mistake, that was the best weekend that Agura's had in MotoGP. Pole position, 2nd in the sprint, 2nd in the Grand Prix. His time will come.
Pace in those first 2, 3, 4 laps, wasn't it, ultimately? That was all that was missing for Ayagura today. Looks pretty happy enough, and why should he be? With 2nd place, because it was clear that once he got up to speed after about 3 or 4 laps behind the factory Ducatis, he was as fast as them, at the very least, if not slightly faster this afternoon, but he could not find a way through at the end. Through sheer force of will, Marc Marquez made it happen.
He gets knocked down, but he keeps getting back up again and again and again and again, doesn't he? The reigning world champion. The mental toughness, the commitment, the sacrifice to never accept that your better days are behind you. Arguably, maybe, his best days are still to come, and which is trouble for the competition. So much for Agura to be proud of here this weekend. His 1st pole, 1st time he's ever led in MotoGP. As well, he was the early front runner in that Grand Prix. But Marc Marquez has done it again. 75 MotoGP victories for the factory Ducati rider. And there's been a huge shift in momentum, you feel, over the course of these last 2 Grand Prix. Marquez Bezzecchi, 7 points in Hungary and in Brno. Marc Marquez, 37 Balaton, 32 here this weekend, 69 points. That is a huge reversal.
It might sound slightly over the top, but Aston already has a bit of a feel of must win about it for Aprilia, just to stop the rot of what's gone on recently. You can see how much...
that KTM to Pedro Acosta stopping, because once again, I mean, your heart goes out to Pedro Acosta. Let's have a listen and see what we can find out what happened to him. When he hit the front, a beautiful pass on Bagnaia going through turn 4. A slightly different tale, a different story. Agura got through on Pecco Bagnaia a little bit quicker. All ifs, buts, whats and maybes. What is not in any doubt, what is not up for any kind of argument is Marc Marquez is in with a great shout of retaining his MotoGP world title. It's been a bleak weekend for Aprilia and a bleak weekend for Marco Bezzecchi, but a fairy tale weekend in many respects for Marc Marquez. Happy to finish within 10 seconds of the win.
Well, in the end, he won it all together. Shout out to this man, arguably the rider there. I don't think he's won the rider of the race, but he would be mine. Joan Mir got the soft rear tyre home in 5th place. In the end, his best ride for quite some time, his best result of the season.
Yeah, that's an absolutely superb performance, that by Joan Mir, who does have his critics, with his tendency to fall off an RT213 lead far too often, but yeah, great job, respect, credit where credit is due. 6 finishes for Honda, been through the father 3. I make that only his 5th top 6 in 65 appearances for HRC. Really, really good ride that by Mir. Chapeau. Pecco Bagnaia, well, once again, did all the early chasing, did all the early running, and he was just absolutely powerless, wasn't he? Initially to stop Marc Marquez, and then to stop Agura coming through again. Alex Marquez there. A thumbs up to his older brother. Nobody knows more the skills than Marc Marquez out on the racetrack. Pecco Bagnaia, there's been a superb weekend for the Italian, winning the sprint, third in the Grand Prix. He's with Jack.
Pecco, what a weekend, sprint victory yesterday and backing up with a podium here in an incredible race. The pace from all 3 of you guys at the front was electric. Clinging on at the front, so you always feel that Mark and I were going to build some momentum at the end of the race.
Yeah, but I was quite comfortable when I was leading, but I was thinking that the pace wasn't enough because I was missing 2-3 tenths compared for 2. I tried everything and we improved the vibration compared to yesterday, but I started having more floating, so maybe I prefer vibration than floating. But in any case, as soon Mark and Dio overtook me, I was struggling a lot to follow them for the front pressure. I needed to slow down a bit, and then the last 3 laps I tried to be back on my pace to try to control a bit the Dija, that I was running very fast. But in any case, happy. Another step in front done, and
yeah, a great weekend. All said and done for Pecco Bagnaia. That is his 63rd MotoGP podium, which does now move him into the outright all-time top 10. He was tied on 62 with former Ducati star Andrea Dovizioso. So some accolade that for Pecco Bagnaia. A good salvage job for Jorge Martin. What might his Brno Grand Prix look like without those 2 long laps today? He eventually finished 21 seconds behind Marc Marquez, but perhaps more importantly for Martin on a weekend where he's not felt really at home on that RSGP. Been lacking front feeling, front confidence, and he's had a lot of crashes so far this year, but without any question, the star of Prix rider of this weekend was Trackhouse's Agura, second the sprint, second the Grand Prix from pole position. Let's get his thoughts for Jack.
Another incredible ride, pole position, second yesterday, second today again, a career best MotoGP finish. You gave absolutely everything in those final 5 laps. Just sum up what's been a brilliant weekend for you and the team.
First of all, I'm happy for my guys, and well, it was really tough one. I think I got good pace towards the end, but he had something more. So we kept trying. But overall, the quality of the team is a lot better.
Absolutely, great job this week.
Yeah, and enjoy those celebrations, Ayagura. Enjoy those celebrations at Trackhouse of Prix. Another brilliant performance, wasn't it, by Ayagura? This was really an aggressive move he made late on to get through on Pekka Bagnaia into the Schwantz corner. Just run out of time. Unfortunately, he was good, but on the day, somebody was slightly better, and that somebody is one of the best to ever do it in MotoGP. What a ride once again. Cracking weekend though for Agura. Poles and 2 second places as Francesco Vidotti, incoming new team manager at Trackhouse, takes the congratulations of Aprilia Racing CEO and Massimo Rivola. He was meant to do some defending in public, hasn't he, after a dramatic couple of weeks for the factory Aprilia team. But he does go back to back in Brno, and it's game on for his World Championship defence. Your race winner here in Czechia is the one, the only, Marc Marquez.
Mark in the blue for the night goes from 102 points down to just 40. You were forced to produce your absolute best today by both Pecco and I. How significant a victory is this for you?
I mean, super important. Victory in the right corner, in the right circuit corners is something special I was looking for, and yeah, you know that I never give up. In the last lap I was suffering a lot. The bike was there, but I was empty. And then just I tried to keep the pace, and I saw that Agura was pushing, but not enough to catch me. So yeah, we're the longest 6 laps of the year. No, I will not say of my career, but of the year, and yeah, definitely across the line by first position.
Incredible performance. Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you.
Well, he told Jack yesterday in a post-sprint interview that the Ducati as a motorcycle is more than capable of winning the World Championship this year. They've got a rider to add to that package as well, haven't they? We just feel that the bike so far this season has been that couple of steps ahead of Marc Marquez. Certainly at Prix, that right shoulder surgery that followed immediately after the French Grand Prix exit in the sprint. But they patched up Marc Marquez. Is still so hard, so tough to beat as he crosses the line, victorious for the 5th time in Brno in the MotoGP World Championship. He's good on anti-clockwise tracks, he's proved in Balaton. He ain't half bad on clockwise circuits as well, is he, the reigning world champion.
Whatever you put in front of him, whether it's left, whether it's right, whether it's straight ahead, Marc Marquez does not take a single backward step. What a world championship we have now. All of a sudden, we thought it might be an Aprilia Cup at the top of the world championship. We now have Bezzecchi 8 points ahead of Jorge Martin. Fabio Di Gianantonio is now just 23 points off the world championship lead in 3rd. Marc Marquez 40 off the lead in 4th. He's only 6 ahead of Ayagura, who in turn is 2 ahead of Acosta and 5 ahead of Bagnaia. We now have 53 points covering the top 7 riders in the World Championship after 9 rounds of the season.
Ho visto? Sì. Dietro era impossibile. Io andava.
Sì, ma si trova poi avanti 2-3 decimi.
Non riesci a fare. Così.
Deve stare quella stessa. Forse esagerare un po'.
La sede. No, ma era giusto. Era giusto. No, ho fatto un passo bello. You were starting in the beginning? Yeah. I saw you that were starting there. We need to go because we will come in the end.
Which lap time you were doing in the last laps?
53, 3, 4. Germany.
Best.
Sorry.
Were you managing something different like that?
But I was, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was able to overtake, so like I was just give up, come back, give up, give up.
Then for the laps, Ninja was arriving incredibly fast.
Soffer? Critical no? You look relaxed, eh? No, no? You're okay, eh?
The thing is just it's too long. We need 15 laps first.
You look great. 25 years old.
25 years old. You can still go to Ibiza and then race on Sunday.
Ciao.
Looking as fresh as a daisy, Iagura. Looks like he could do another 21 laps. I'm not sure we can say the same about Pecco Bagnaia and Marc Marquez. Double podium though for the factory Ducati team. They are split by Iagura. His best ever MotoGP finish. First time he's ever led in the Premier class as well. Showing his pure class in that Grand Prix, didn't he? City World Champion Moto3 about to join the podium celebrations. His first back-to-back wins since Austria and Hungary. 11 months ago now for Marc Marquez. He's tired, he's exhausted, but he won't care because there's 32 more vital World Championship points collected here in Czechia.
21 other MotoGP riders who are tired of him at the moment. Formula One incorrectly and inadvertently described him as a former Moto2 rider last weekend. How so many MotoGP riders are remember wish that were the case, because he is so hard to beat. Well, barely broke sweat, did he? Iagura, as Marc Marquez pointed out. Look, he looks fresh as a daisy. As Pecco Bagnaia was reflecting on the physical toll that Grand Prix took on him today. Marc Marquez, what can you do to beat him? When he's at his best, you don't, quite simply, because he is one of, if not the very best to ever do it on two wheels. As Iagura stood there with arms crossed on the podium. Congratulations to Ducati, who have now won 4 of the last 6 Grand Prix. What crisis, they will be saying. They have struck back big time since the embarrassment, I guess they would have seen it, of being beaten at home by a Prix at Mugello. Third place for Pecco Bagnaia. He's getting used to those. 4 of them on the bounce now. Barcelona, Mugello, Balaton and Brno. Pecco Bagnaia finishes P3. A pair of second places for Iagura. Tour de France legend Sir Mark Cavendish hands over his second Sunday podium of the season. MotoGP 101, Marc Marquez is your winner. His 100th Grand Prix win. His second in as many Grand Prix. And from feeling as if he was almost out of MotoGP title contention, he may now be the favourite again as Marc Marquez goes back-to-back in Balaton and now in Brno.
Make no mistake, Marc Marquez is firmly in the hunt for his 8th MotoGP world title. 2 wins in the space of 2 Sunday Grand Prix. Some brilliant score, spectacular own goals left, right and centre. Hitting the target once again and hitting the top step of the podium is 33-year-old Spaniard, the factory Ducati superstar Marc Marquez, as Ducati celebrate their double podium. And Aprilia's star performer, without any question, this weekend was the rising star from the land of the rising. So a great weekend for Igo. So much for him to look back on with an enormous sense of pride. Pole position, first Japanese rider to do so in 6 years. Led the Grand Prix very early on. First taste that I's had of the world's best riders behind his rear wheel. Pecco Bagnaia then took over at the front, but in extremely hot conditions. It was a pace from Marc Marquez late on that was just too hot to handle. Once again, just too strong, too good, too fast. Well, we're going to pack our bags very, very quickly. Make a short trip to one of our most iconic and historic Grand Prix venues. It's the end of June, which can mean only one thing. We are heading to legendary CZECHIA Assen, the Grand Prix of the Netherlands. Coming up next weekend as we hurtle towards the summer break. Marc Marquez hurtling towards top spot in the World Championship. So not much time to celebrate, not too much time to relax as we go arguably to the most famous MotoGP venue of them all. Join us next weekend, I'm sure you will do, for the TISO Grand Prix of the Netherlands. CZECHIA Assen, next destination.
Grand Prix victory number 101 for Marc Marquez. And one of his sweetest, surely, as he denies Ayagura. Pecco Bagnaia, the long-time leader, 3rd. Fabio Gian Antonio set the fastest lap on the last lap, trying to catch Bagnaia, but had to settle for 4th. Joan Mir, a superb 5th ahead of Fermin Aldeguer. All these promoted by a last-lap breakdown for Pedro Acosta. Aldeguer, Fernandez, Marini, Martin, 9th. After his double long lap penalty. Top 10 completed by Enea Bastianini. Moreira faded to 11th, ahead of Binder, Morbidelli. Points for Razgatlioglu, and a solitary point on his 200th start for Maverick Vinales. Alex Rins pulled into the pits. Fabio Quartararo crashed early on. They joined Pedro Acosta as retirement. Marco Bezzecchi then, who will return to action at Assen on Friday. The free practice will do so with just an 8-point lead now over his teammate Jorge Martin, but perhaps more significantly 40 points his advantage over the reigning champion Marc Marquez. Just 53 covers the top 7. Is now in the Constructors' Championship after 4 wins out of the last 6. Ducati now just 5 points behind Aprilia. Team standings, Aprilia's lead has also been slashed in that particular championship after Ducati Lenovo scored 41 points today to cut Aprilia Racing's lead down to 85. Bring you some highlights then. course, a MotoGP race that took place without the championship leader, Marco Bezzecchi, banned after the altercation with the marshal yesterday. And it felt as if Ayagura had done a lot of the hard work when he converted pole into the lead at turn 1. Marquez, though, attacking early as he seized third place from Pecco Bagnaia. That came second. As both Bagnaia and Marc Marquez moved through on Ayagura. Bagnaia taking the lead on lap 2. Ayagura down to third as Marc Marquez saw his opportunity to snatch second place. Tense battle unfolded then between the top 3. Jorge Martin, of course, from the third row of the grid and 2 long lap penalties. Expertly serving the 2 long lap penalties. Once he'd served them both, he was down in 13th place. He would ultimately recover up to 9th. Ayagura continuing to loom behind the factory Ducati riders. Pedro Costa had his own issues. He had to move over and let Fabio Di Gianantonio through. Knowing that Ayagura would become a serious pest in the latter stages, Marc Marquez had to strike and snatch the lead from teammate Bagnaia. Bagnaia at that point would fade as Ayagura didn't wait long before he snatched second place. Try as he might, he could not quite chase down the reigning champion. Acosta's difficult day ended on the final lap as his KTM gave up the ghost. But there is absolutely no giving up for Marc Marquez as he takes back-to-back MotoGP victories. 2 in a row for the reigning champion. Is he potentially the favourite again for title glory? The 93 wins in Brno. He's now just 45 points off the World Championship, 40 points off the World Championship lead. And Marco Bezzecchi needs a response when he returns from suspension at the Dutch TT next weekend.